Welcome to the podcast on Leaders Cultivating a Flourishing World with Dr. Merrick Armin Esper. Today we're introducing Dr. Scott Parsons, a leading expert in character education, ethical leadership, and human flourishing. Dr. Parsons is the founder of the Flourishing Leaders Academy. He serves as the executive director of the Institute for Character and Leadership at Fairleigh Dickinson University and hosts the Flourishing Leaders podcast. He brings a unique blend of academic and real-world leadership experience. Welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to the program Leaders Cultivating a Flourishing World. This is a program to interview colleagues, authors, speakers, researchers on the topic of character education, flourishing, and human development. Today, I have the honor of having in this program Dr. Scott Parsons. Dr. Scott Parsons is a leading expert in character education, ethical leadership, and human flourishing. He serves as the executive director of the Institute for Character and Leadership at Fairleigh Dickinson University and is the founder of the Flourishing Leaders Academy. He brings a unique blend of academic depth and real-world leadership experience, including many years teaching ethics and philosophy and multiple leadership roles as a U.S. Army officer. Dr. Parsons holds a PhD in character education from the University of Birmingham in the United Kingdom, specifically in the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtue, and has published widely on virtue ethics, flourishing, and leadership. He also hosts the Flourishing Leaders podcast, featuring global experts in character and well-being. Welcome, Dr. Parsons.
Thank you, Mari Carmen. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you. I love the work you're doing, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you.
Thank you so much. It's an honor having you here. So let's start talking about flourishing, character education, leadership, these beautiful topics for the well-being of the world. So how do you define human flourishing, and what do you see as its essential components in the context of education and leadership?
I love this question, Mari Carmen. For me, human flourishing is the lifelong process of becoming the kind of person who can live, lead, and contribute well across changing roles, pressures, and life stages. Flourishing is not a fixed destination or a feeling of happiness. It's a dynamic integration of who we are, what we do, how we relate, and why our lives matter. I like how you asked about education and leadership. So for me, in education and leadership, flourishing rests on four interwoven elements: character, confidence, connection, and purpose. You can have success without flourishing, but you can't sustain flourishing without character, especially practical wisdom. What I've seen across my work in schools, universities, healthcare, and organizations is that flourishing emerges when people develop the moral and intellectual capacities to make good judgments in complex situations, when we care for others, and act with integrity under pressure.
Great. Thank you so much. And in your experience, Dr. Parsons, what are the most effective ways to integrate character education into existing school or university structures without overwhelming teachers and administrators?
No, that's a really important question. I think about this a lot. I talk about this a lot. And for me, one of the most important lessons I've learned is that character education works best when it's integrated, not added. Educators are already overwhelmed. So when character is framed as a separate initiative, it creates resistance, even among people who care deeply about character. The most effective approach is to embed character into what educators are already doing: advising conversations, mentoring relationships, classroom norms, feedback practices, and leadership expectations. Shared frameworks like the VA character strengths and the golden mean inventory give educators a common language for noticing and discussing character without requiring new curricula. When character becomes a lens rather than a program, it actually simplifies decision making and strengthens coherence across the institution. One practical example comes from my work with Dr. Bob McGrath, who is the senior scientist at the VIA Institute on Character and also a professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University in psychology. Together, we use the Golden Mean Inventory, which helps people see not just which strengths they have, but whether they're overusing, underusing them, or using them wisely.
Great. So the best way is to integrate it in the curriculum and in the life of the institution.
Absolutely.
So what role does leadership play in cultivating environments where flourishing becomes possible for students, educators, and family? So what role does the leadership play in cultivating this?
That's a great question, Monica Carmen. I think leadership plays a decisive role because culture follows character. Leaders signal, often unintentionally, what truly matters through their choices, priorities, and reactions under stress. So flourishing environments emerge when leaders model virtues such as humility, courage, fairness, and compassion, especially when decisions are difficult. Leaders also cultivate flourishing by attending to how results are achieved, not just whether they're achieved. When ethical shortcuts are rewarded, character erodes. When integrity is honored, trust grows. So across my work with leaders, I've seen that flourishing doesn't come from vision statements. It comes from consistent moral leadership day after day.
Great. And how can institutions move from teaching about virtues to actually forming them in students' daily habits and decision making? So how can institutions help this to be character traits in the lives of the students, and not just in the students, in the faculty and the families?
This is a really great question, Maria Carmen. I think virtues aren't formed primarily through lectures. They're not, right? They're formed through practice, reflection, and feedback. Institutions move from teaching to formations when they intentionally design environments where people repeatedly exercise virtues in real situations. This includes structured reflection on decisions, mentoring conversations focused on character, and coaching that helps people calibrate their strengths. The Golden Mean Inventory that I referenced earlier is especially helpful here. It shows people that virtues can be overused or underused, not just present or absence. This is exactly where the Golden Mean Inventory has been so helpful in my work with Bob McGrath. It shifts the conversation from do they have these virtues or this virtue, or how are they using it in real situations? That's where formation actually happens. So formation happens when people are invited to notice how their character strengths show up in daily choices and are supported in using their strengths wisely.
Yes, and I published a book titled How to Educate in Ethical Values with strategies to integrate character in the subjects for all labels. And some of the most important strategies are those where you help the student to practice the virtues, as you say, to apply those values you want to foster or promote, giving them opportunities to experience how is to be kind, respectful, practice integrity, and all the beautiful virtues. Yeah. So another question. What intentional strategies have you found most successful for embedding ethical content across academic disciplines?
No, that's a great question. Ethical content becomes meaningful when it's discipline specific. Instead of asking abstract moral questions, I like to ask, what does good judgment look like in this particular field? Where do ethical tensions arise? Case studies, professional dilemmas, and reflective discussions help students see ethics as integral to excellence rather than an external constraint. When ethical reasoning is connected to professional identity, what it means to be a good engineer, educator, clinician, or leader, studies engage more deeply. Ethics become more compelling when it's about becoming a certain kind of professional, not just following the rules. So, for instance, when I was a professor at West Point, my students, my cadets, were going to be Army officers. And it was during the time of both wars that we were in. And so they really wanted to know what it was like. So I would give real life practical examples that I experienced, the moral dilemmas I experienced in combat. And I would often ask them, what would you do in this situation before I told them what I did? Sometimes I did a really good thing. Sometimes I didn't do a really good thing. And so it's helpful for them to see that also these people that they look up to still make mistakes. We're not always making the right decisions as it relates to virtues, but having them think about this within context, whatever your field, engineering, business, whatever it is, education, if you put it within that context, it helps them understand the importance of it.
Great. Thank you so much. Another important question is about the community. How can families, schools, and higher education institutions work together to reinforce character development in ways that feel natural, consistent, and culturally responsive and efficacious for the context of the community?
No, I think that's a beautiful question. And I think what matters most is alignment, not uniformity. We often think it has to be identical when that's not really it. When families, schools, and universities share a common language about character, what we often call character virtue, virtue literacy or character literacy, it's helpful, right? It reinforces similar expectations. Young people experience coherence rather than confusion. This doesn't require perfect agreement, as I mentioned. It requires mutual respect, cultural responsiveness, and clear communication. When values are modeled consistently across contexts, character development feels natural rather than imposed. In my experience, flourishing grows when all partners see themselves as co-educators of character, not isolated actors.
Yes, that's great. And all the stakeholders together working to have a beautiful environment where the virtues can grow, and the students and the faculty and the families, everybody can flourish. I have seen that researching in schools, and I will love all the schools and educational institutions practicing this,
Mhm.
integrating virtues, character traits, ethics in the classroom, in the environment, and in everything, in the policies. So the school community, the university community would flourish. Yeah. So, what are some common misconceptions about character education that you believe need to be corrected in general in the faculty, society, in the parents?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me this question, Buddy Carmen, because I think there are some common misconceptions. I deal with this when I deal with families, with educators, sometimes with business schools. They think, this is not the kind of language we should be using, which in fact it is. One common misconception for me is that character education is soft or unscientific. In reality, as you know, it's grounded in decades of research from psychology and philosophy and education and neuroscience. And another misconception is that it's about behavior management rather than internal formation. Character education aims to shape who people become, not just how they behave when supervised. And that's the key, right? When they're watched, when people are looking. Finally, there's the idea that character education is values neutral. Every educational system promotes values. Character education simply makes these commitments explicit and intentional.
Yes, that's true. And the not just the schools or higher education institutions, but the businesses, all the sectors, they have the mission, vision, values.
Okay.
So the values are um, they form the compass that for your steps in your work, in your family, in your life, in your school. So um, what I say to teachers and faculty and parents, like specifically teachers and faculty that, wanting or not, we are teaching values. So
That's right.
the right thing is to do it intentionally, professionally, and according to the mission of the school. Because if in a school or a university, it's the advertisement says, in this school we promote integrity, excellence, respect, kindness, um, etc. So that should be true in the curriculum, in the environment, in everything we do. So that way, the students, when they graduate, they have these character traits in their personalities. And it's not, as you said, imposition or forcing people for nothing. It's part of human beings. What also I say, Dr. Parsons, is that if we are teaching science in every level, we have the duty to teach this science for good.
Yes.
So, if we won't teach this for good explicitly, what is good for the society, to construct, not to destruct, not to destroy, to build a better community, then better, if we don't do that, then better don't teach science.
That's right.
Because we don't know what the person will do with what you're teaching, right? So, I have been in this field for 30 years, and really, this is an explicit and professional component of education, all labels, pre-K to PhD.
Yeah.
So, because as I said, as teachers or professors, we're doing it on how we act, how we speak, what we teach, how we evaluate the homeworks, etc. So the best thing is to define the virtues and try to work and live with them. According to your experience, what indicators, factors, metrics in research do you believe best capture whether a school or organization is truly fostering flourishing in its community?
That's a really great question. I think flourishing is best assessed through a combination of quantitative and qualitative indicators. These include trust, psychological safety, ethical decision making under pressure, and how people respond to failure, right? I like to say it's, did you win or learn? It's not did you win or fail, it's did you learn? Tools like the golden mean inventory that I referenced earlier help capture not just what strengths people possess, but how wisely are they using them. You can often tell whether an organization is flourishing by observing how it handles conflict, uncertainty, and moral tension. Flourishing shows up in everyday culture, like you pointed out earlier, not just in performance metrics. One thing that Bob McGrath and I have found through the Golden Mean Inventory is that flourishing isn't about possessing strengths, it's about how wisely people use them under pressure.
Yes. And if you could recommend one transformative practice that leaders should adopt to model character and promote flourishing, what it be? What would it be?
I think most people that know me would say that I would say reflection. If I had to name one practice, it would be through intentional reflection, because reflection allows leaders to transform experience into wisdom, right? And that's what this is all about. So leaders who regularly pause to ask who they are becoming, how their decisions affect other people, and whether their strengths are well calibrated, create space for growth. Reflection slows reaction and deepens judgment. In my work, reflective leaders consistently make wiser, more humane decisions and foster flourishing around them.
Thank you. Reflective leaders. That's
Thank you.
great. I would like to ask about the building blocks of professional practice
Mhm.
to be an excellent professional, and how this require the integration of the intellectual, civic, moral, and performance virtues toward achieving practical wisdom or phronesis. So, from your perspective, what concrete efforts can professionals and institutions take to intentionally cultivate these four domains of character so that practical wisdom becomes embodied in daily decision making across all sectors of the professions?
So I think really, if you think about intellectual character, right, institutions cultivate intellectual character by rewarding things like curiosity, careful reasoning, and intellectual humility. There's a lack of that, really. And so if we can do more of that, it's helpful. This means valuing good questions as much as correct answers and creating environments where people can revise their views without fear of doing so. Leaders model intellectual character when they admit uncertainty, invite challenge, and remain open to evidence. Intellectual virtues flourish when truth seeking is prized over ego protection. And this creates professionals who reason well and remain open to learning throughout their careers. This idea of calibration, of knowing when to lean into a strength and when to hold back, is something I've explored deeply, as I referenced earlier with Professor Bob McGrath through the Golden Mean Network. If we think about civic character, it develops when institutions intentionally connect individual roles to the common good. You referenced that earlier, Mark Common. Service learning, community engagement, and collaborative projects help professionals see themselves as contributors to something larger than themselves. In sectors that emphasize individual performance, civic virtues grow when leaders reward collaboration, when they reward ethical responsibility and service orientation. People flourish when they understand how their work benefits others. And so civic character reminds us that excellence is relational, not merely individual. You also referenced the building block of moral character. Organizations nurture moral character by shaping cultures where integrity, honesty, compassion, and justice are modeled, rewarded, and protected. This requires leaders who respond to mistakes with accountability and grace, address ethical concerns openly, and make values visible in decision making. Moral character forms when people feel safe to act rightly, and even when it's costly. We have to do that sometimes. It's often referred to as moral courage. Over time, culture becomes the most powerful teacher of moral character. And then lastly, you referenced the building block of performance character. Performance character is cultivated by supporting resilience, diligence, and self-regulation. This includes realistic expectations, attention to well-being, and coaching that emphasizes sustainable excellence. People develop performance virtues when effort is recognized, growth is supported, and rest is respected. Flourishing excellence is relentless. It's enduring, right? Performance character enables people to sustain excellence without sacrificing their humanity.
Thank you. And also, I reflect that performance virtues, they help us to practice civic virtues, moral virtues, intellectual virtues, no? Like
Absolutely.
practicing, as you said, self-regulation, resilience, diligence, determination. So that
Yes.
can help us also to practice the other. As the virtues, they are sisters, no?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
One and you practice others, and yeah, they are connected. And
Absolutely.
Dr. Parsons, last question. How do these four strands, intellectual, civic, moral, and performance virtues, come together in real professional life to form phronesis, practical wisdom, the capacity to deliberate well, choose well, act well, speak well for the right reasons in the right time and in the right way?
Well, I love how you put that, the four sisters. That's a beautiful way of thinking about it. So those four sisters in real professional life, they converge in moments of decision, right? So you said it, phronesis, practical wisdom. It emerges when intellectual clarity, moral integrity, civic responsibility, and performance discipline are rightly ordered. Practical wisdom allows people to deliberate well, choose well, and act well, as you said, for the right reasons, at the right time, and in the right way. This is the heart of flourishing professionalism. Ultimately, phronesis is what enables character to become wisdom in action. This is really where phronesis comes alive. In my work with Bob McGrath, I've referenced a few times throughout this conversation, and through the golden mean inventory, we've seen that wisdom isn't about maximizing virtues. It's about calibrating them well in context for the sake.
Yeah, and the practical wisdom will help us to decide which virtue specifically should practice uh, for the greater good in each moment of our life.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's all of those together to help us achieve what we need to.
Yeah, because living is an art, no? And we,
Absolutely.
uh, like I have been years and decades studying, researching, reading books, and I love this topic, and we never finish learning. And
No,
it's one day at a time, right?
exactly.
Trying to build our own character, trying to correct mistakes, trying to be a better person, um, and learning from our mistakes, as you said. And that's exciting. Life is beautiful. Although we have problems, we have challenges, but that's beautiful because that makes us. Be out of our comfort zone, challenge
Mhm.
ourselves, and practice more virtues. Like in the pandemic time, we had to be resilient. We have to be
Yeah,
flexible. We have to learn how to live like that. And we have to be merciful and practice compassion, kindness, generosity, and all the virtues. Hope, how we will get out from
yes.
this. And although you don't see
No,
them,
you don't.
have hope, right? So um, I think life is beautiful and it's more beautiful if we consciously try to cultivate character traits and virtues for good in ourselves, in our community, and for the world. So, what would be your message for the leaders of the world, leaders in education, leaders on civic sectors, leaders in the businesses, leaders for schools?
Well, I think really what you just said about life being beautiful and that we develop and learn and practice. Because at the end of the day, flourishing isn't about perfection, it's about wisdom. It's about becoming the kind of person who can navigate complexity with integrity, compassion, and good judgment. That's the work I care most deeply about. And the good news is character can be cultivated and wisdom can grow. Thanks for your time and thanks for having me on the podcast, Mari Carmen.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor, and we learned a lot in this conversation with Dr. Scott Parsons, an expert in character education, leadership, and flourishing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mari Carmen.
Bye.